Okay guys, you should see my screen and let me get my document camera going. So this video, I'm going to go ahead and call it Unit 1 Review. So the plan is for me to go through, get a little more situated. I have already shot a video that's telling you what particular types of problems will be on your exam. Okay. Tomorrow we will review by trying to play a game. And so my plan is to build from one step to two step to multi-step in this video, and then go to inequalities. And this is going to help you guys, so I hope that everyone's watching, and I will tell you how to find this video. All right, here we go. So one thing that will be on your test will be one step. So I'm going to give this a quick. So remember, one-step equations, and again, there's already a video on one step, so I'm not going to spend very long on this. But one-step equations, again, you solve them in one step. So what if you had something like negative 7r is equal to negative 56? Okay, so the thing that I'm noticing in a lot of ways is you guys have to make sure that you know your integer rules. And I've asked multiple times, make sure you study it. And then there's also at the end of the what will be on your exam 1 test, I went over the rule of integers, and I went over it in class, okay? So as you can see, I have to think, what is happening to my variable? And here, when you see a coefficient right next to a variable, they're married, so this is multiplication, okay? So in one step, the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide by negative 7. You have to keep that sign. What I do to one side, I'm going to do to the other. And as you can see, in one step, I've now solved for r, and r is equal to positive 8. Okay, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. 56 divided by 7 is positive 8. So that's what one-step equations are. So I'm going to make up one more. So if I had something like x minus 6 is equal to 14. Okay, so in this problem, again, one step, what is happening to x? It's being subtracted 6 away from it, right? So the opposite of subtraction is addition. So in one step, when I add 6 to both sides, I'm done. The answer is 20. Okay, so x equals 20. Okay, so I hope that makes sense for one step. So again, identify what's happening to your variable, what operation is there, and do the inverse operation. All right, so then we've talked about two-step equations. And there's a video on two-step equations on this channel. Okay, so in two steps, you have to do, just like it sounds, two steps. So what if I had something like negative 6m minus 10 equals 4. Let's put a negative 4. I'm making these up, so there's no worksheet for this. Just follow along. And so let's see how many steps it takes for us to figure out what m is, because we're trying to isolate and figure out the unknown value for m. So the first thing I tell myself is, okay, what's happening to m? Well, I'm not going to talk about 10 being taken away from it, because this multiplication or marriage is a stronger connection. So I'm going to say negative 6 is being multiplied to m, and then 10 is being taken away from that situation, right? So the first thing, as I've told y'all, you have to do addition and subtraction first. Okay, so remember I talked about PEMDAS, and I said, hey, when we were doing order of operations, we go this way down from P to S for expressions, but when we do equations, we do S to P. Okay, so this side is for equations, and the other side is for expressions, things that don't have an equal sign. So that's what that meant when I had been teaching it. So things without an equal sign over here with an equal sign. All right, so the first thing I'm going to look at is I want to get rid of this minus 10. So I'm going to add 10, doing the inverse operation to both sides. And so that's my first step. And then I'm going to drop down the 6m, but it's negative, so a negative 6m. And then integer rules. I subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. This is positive 6. And then it's very important, again, to take that sign. So let me highlight that I'm not going to divide by 6. Or some of you guys, I've heard you say, I'm going to divide by 6m. No, do not take away this variable on this side. Leave him there. Okay, we just want to get rid of the coefficient, but you have to include the sign. So divide by negative 6 to both sides. So m is equal to -1. All right, and then of course we can prove or disprove. So we're going to go over here. Let me see if I can, yeah, let me grab another color. Excuse me. And so since m is equal to -1, so 6 is -1, then when I go back to this equation, I'm going to plug a -1 right here. Okay, so I'm going to do my check over here to the side. I'm going to move over. So it's -6 times m was equal to -1. So I'm substituting that in. Minus 10 equals -4. So let's see if that's true. So we know that -6, I'm sorry, times -1 is 6, positive. Minus 10, does that equal -4? It does, because again, remember I told you change those subtraction sentences into addition? If I bump back the negative, so I have a positive plus a negative, subtract, keep the sign of the bigger number. So -4 does equal -4. So that means we do have the right solution. All right, and again, we did that in 2 steps. The first step was I added 10, was step 1, and then step 2, I divided by -6. So that's a 2-step equation. All right, so now let's get into some harder ones. These are the ones I really want to focus on because there's a lot more steps. So let's do multi-step. So in multi-step equations, we have more than 2 steps. Okay, so let's put multi-step. So multi-step will be on your test. Okay, and so one of these will be, I'm just pulling this out of a book I found. So why don't we try -2, open parentheses, 3 times n, 3n minus 5, and that is, we added 3n equals 2 minus n. Okay, so of course the first thing we're going to do, and now we're talking about those key points, is you have to do the distributive property or combine like terms, or sometimes you have to do both. So let me say that very carefully. Right now, I see I have a distributive property because as soon as I see that there is a number in front of a parentheses and there's people inside of here, terms inside the parentheses, I need to free them out, okay? I need to break them out of that, okay, enclosure, right? So I gotta multiply. And once I do the distributive property, that's where we put dp, that's when, okay, that's a d. That's when I know that I will be able to free those terms out of the parentheses, so I have to multiply. So -2 times 3n is -6n. -2 times -5. Okay, so watch the sign. So -2 times -5 is +10. And I'm going to drop down the 3n and drop down the 2 minus n on the right, because there's nothing that I'm doing in that step besides doing the distributive property. And so usually after the distributive property, sometime you have combined like terms. That's what we have over here on the left. There's a -6n and a 3n. So I'm going to go and highlight my like terms. This one has an n and this one has an n. Okay, so when I do that, I'm going to subtract. That's -3n. I'm sorry if it's a little dark, but this is a -3n plus 10, and then I have 2 minus n. So again, in this step here, guys, I did CLT, combine like terms. I think what I hear in class is some people say combine like terms at this step here because you're thinking, oh, I want to combine my letters together and my numbers. So get it very straight and be careful what you're saying to yourself. We do CLT, combining like terms, that when we look on one side of the equal sign, if we have similar or like terms, that's when we do combine like terms in this step. When you get to this step, and I can't stress this enough, okay, I'm going to change colors. If I have a variable with a constant, and then on the other side I have a constant and a variable, this is where I do letters left, numbers right. So that's where the LL in R comes into play, because you cannot do combine like terms. That's why at this step, you guys, I don't like to hear y'all say that. I don't like to hear you say, oh, I'm going to do combine like terms. It's focusing, okay? So this is where I'm going to do letters left, numbers right, Okay, so I'm bringing all of my letters. Anybody who's on the right, we have to do an inverse operation. So I'm going to do plus n. What I do to one side, I'm going to do to the other. So this is in the way, but I'm going to go right below there. Plus n, okay? This is gone on the right side. And then now let's see what we have. So we have negative 3n plus n, subtract. Keep the sign of the bigger number. There's a 1 here. So we're subtracting for 2, but it's a negative 2n plus 10 is equal to 2. So I've now taken, and all of my variables or letters are on the left side of the equal sign. All right? Now I'm going to do my constants or numbers. They're going to move to the right side. So this guy has to move to this side. So the opposite of addition is subtraction. So I'm minusing 10. And now I'm at negative 2n is equal to, again, I like to put a plus so you can see it. Subtract, keep the sign of the bigger number, negative 8. And so the other thing I want to talk about, and I'll do it on another example too, is listen carefully. At the top of the worksheets, and I'll find it in a second, those are the steps that are already in your key points. We did the distributive property. We did combine like terms. So in this problem, see, both of them had to happen. Then we get to here, and then we do letters left, numbers right. Okay? In the letters left, numbers right step, please listen to this part, okay? That's where we always do, for inverse operation, addition or subtraction. So this right here, where we do letters left, numbers right, that's when we do add, subtraction, okay, as the inverse operation. Okay, that's the part that I was talking about. Hey, all of that is step number 2. And then distributive property and combine like terms, all of this is step number 1. Okay, then if you were paying attention and you take your notes and you rewrite your notes, it would make a lot of sense. In the last step, the third step, is always where we're going to do what? Multiplication. And we do multiplication if there's some kind of fraction as a coefficient. And we do division if there's just a whole number. Okay, so, and you'll see it as we do it, because I'm going to try to do one that's a fraction. So now I'm going to divide by negative 2. Have to keep the sign of that coefficient, and the final answer, n is equal to 4. Steps 1, 2, and 3. All right, and so I'm going to do the same thing again. Let me find another problem. All right, oops, sorry, it's positive. Let me just show it good. How it looks like that. You could pause it anywhere you need to pause it. All right, I'm going to go to the next one. Okay, so let's do another multi-step. Oh, I'm going to throw this in here just because we've talked about them. Minus 3 over negative 7 equals 5. So you remember how we talked about these, that these are the exceptions, and then I'll go back to another regular multi-step that we're used to seeing. So again, write down this one is an exception. Why is this an exception? Because before, like I told you in the last problem, I told you that we do solving of equations from S to P. So addition and subtraction comes before multiplication and division. But this is the exception. Why? Because when you have that variable in the numerator and there's some kind of number in the denominator and it looks like a fraction on one side, we have to do multiplication and division first. So this one is the exception, okay, to this rule. So the first thing we're going to do is we got to get rid of that negative 7 who's just hanging on at the bottom of our feet, right? So we're going to multiply, because the opposite of division is multiplication. So I'm I'm multiplying by negative 7 on this side times negative 7 also on that side. And you have to trust me, because I can show you in the distributive property in a lot of detail why this guy goes away, but I don't have time right this moment. So we are going to cancel out, okay? And now that numerator is now liberated and there's nobody hanging at the bottom. So we got 2r minus 3 is equal to negative 35. So again, multiplication and division, or multiplication came before addition and subtraction. So now we're back to a linear horizontal equation. So now I can go back to doing like my addition and subtraction. Letters left, numbers right, move to one side. So in this case, the letters on the left, so I'm going to move the 3. inverse operation. So 2r is equal to, subtract, keep the sign of the bigger number, this is negative 32, divided by 2, divided by 2, r is equal to negative 16, okay? A negative divided by a positive is a negative, and the math doesn't change with the arithmetic. Okay, so I hope that makes sense on that one. And I cannot stress to you enough that the way to get good at doing math is, one, you have to practice, that's a big thing, and then two, you have to go back, rewrite over the notes so that you can see things multiple times till it stays with you. And the other thing I'm going to say to you is write those integer rules again and again and again, just till you get more comfortable, okay? So what I'm looking for real quick, give me a second, is I'm trying to find more multi-step. And I want to also just for a moment put those notes back on the screen. So at the top of that, or if you want to take a picture because you don't have it, those are those steps again of how to solve a multi-step. Okay. And I'm trying to find another. Okay. All right, here we go. Here's one. Okay. All right, so now let's do another multi-step. So what if we were given something like this? 4x plus 3 minus 4 is equal to 8. And then I have a 1/2 x, because fractions can happen like that, okay? So in this problem, remember I talked about, we're still doing multi-step, and then after we do multi-step, we can also have those 3 types of special solutions. So watch this problem here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight those numbers in front of the parentheses, which tells me, oh, I have to do the distributive property first. Plus, Miss Mosley said that the first step is always something with combined like terms or distributive property. So I'm going to multiply. Okay, so, and I'm also going to put a dp. Stop, Sophia. Stop. 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 So I also am going to write dp so you know that's the distributive property. So 4 times x is 4x plus, and I'll even write it out if you want, 4 times 3. So that became 4x plus 12 minus 4. Okay, and then this one right here, 8 times, remember this guy is multiplying and breaking out those terms from the parentheses. So 8 times a half, so what's half of 8? Half times 8 would be a 4 with an x. So this is a 4x here. And then 8 times 1, I'm just going to show where I got stuff from. 8 times 1 is 8. All right. So now in this step, you'll say, okay, great, we did the distributive property. Now I'm looking again. I go back to the left. Make sure you take care of every step and pay attention. I go back to the left and I'm moving and I say, oh, look, I have combined like terms. So right here is the CLT. Okay, so here I'm going to combine the 12 minus 4 for combined like terms, and that's 8. So what you'll notice here is you have 4x plus 8, and then guess what? The same thing is on this side. So they're both, we have the same expression, not expression, I'm sorry, but the same type of equation on both sides. I bet you this is going to be true and infinite. So here we go. We're still going to do letters left, number to the right. So I'm going to subtract 4x, move it to the left. Doing the opposite of addition is subtraction. And guess what? That's also going to be 0. And guess what? 8 equals 8. This is a true statement. And anytime you get it to where the variables are gone, and then you're left with numbers, and this side equals this right here, then it's infinite. There are infinite solutions or all real numbers. Okay, so that's the answer for this one, and that's one of those, again, special solutions. Because remember, like I said, special solutions can be one of 3 types. They can be one answer, one unique value, like this one, okay, where it's just one answer, or it could be no solution, or it can be the all real numbers are infinite. All real numbers, okay? So there are 3 types. one answer, no answer at all, or infinite answers, all real numbers, okay? So let me do one more of those. So I'm going to do another multi-step, and then I'm going to move into inequalities. Sorry about the cord. Trying my best. Okay, how about this one? So I have 5n minus 7n plus 3 plus 2n equals negative 25. Okay. Yeah. All right, so for this one, the first thing you should think about is, hey, can I do the distributive property? Can I do combined like terms? And in this step, look, I see a parentheses, and you have to keep that sign. If there's a minus in front of that number on the outside, it also has to be, included in that number, right? The coefficient. So I have to do a negative 7 times those two terms. Sorry about that, guys. So 5n, there's nothing to do to this guy. Don't try to sit back and think you can combine those. They're not like terms, okay? And let me also say this 1 second, because I had one of these with another student. So even if you saw something like this, don't even try to do like plus and bump back, okay? I cannot stress that enough. Do not try to combine these two outside the parentheses. This guy's main objective is to free out those other two terms in the parentheses. So you don't want to sit back and say, oh, 3 minus 7 is negative 4, and then do the distributive property. Drop this guy down, and then focus on freeing those other two people. Okay, here we go. So, hope that makes sense. Negative 7n minus 21 plus 2n, and then equals negative 25. So the interesting thing about this one, I'm going to put the dp again for distributive property. But after I do the distributive property, look over here back to the left. I have a lot of terms that I can combine. So here's my CLT. And my like terms, this can happen, is there's 3 of them. There's a 5n minus 7n, and then there's this 2n back here. And don't get too much in a rush trying to do too many steps at one time. Break it down. So I would have changed to a plus, bump back, and look, I have negative 2n minus 21. It just helps me to see it if I just go back and rewrite it. And I still have another combined like terms because these two are like terms. I include the sign, and what do you notice? They're going to cancel out. That happens, okay? And so now, is this a true or false statement? And it's false. Negative 21 would never equal negative 25, so this is a false statement, so therefore this one has no solution. So I want to be clear that on the test, you may have some that are just one answer, x equal negative 2, x equals negative 2 over 5, doesn't matter. Or you may have some that are no solution because you get a false statement, or you have some that are all real numbers or infinite solutions because you get a true statement. And that's everything on equations, okay guys? So now let me move on to inequalities. All right. Now, for inequalities, the beauty of this is the same thing happens with inequalities, okay? With inequalities, we're going to do the same steps. So, give me 1 second. Yeah, let's do this. For the inequalities, what if we had 6y plus 7 greater than 8y minus 1? Okay, so when I look at this, and I don't want to get confused because, oh my gosh, it's one of those inequality symbols, it's the same step. Now remember I said, if it's facing towards the left, if you're a left-hander, then it's the hand you're writing with. If this sign is facing toward the left, it's a greater than. Why is that? Because if I read this from left to right, this is what it's saying. It's saying 6y, 6 times y, plus 7. This amount over here is greater than 8y minus 1. Okay, so if it's facing towards the left, it's a greater than. So let me put that all up at the top real quick. If it's facing to the left, okay, it could be a greater than or equal to. So this is a greater than. And if they're facing towards your right and you're right-handed, because I'm right-handed, so they're facing this way, it's a less than. Okay? All right, I went over it, I've said it. Here we go. So now when I look at this, I say, hey, there it is. It's a letter and a number and a variable and a constant. So therefore, I got to do letters left, numbers to the right in this step. Letters left, numbers right. And I notice that this is a positive 8y, so I'm going to do a minus 8y. That's gone. And then I notice this is 6y minus 8y, and if I put a little plus, I can tell that I need to subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. So this is a negative 2y plus 7 greater than negative 1. All right, letters to the left, all they're taken care of here. Now numbers to the right. Now also let me say something kind of silly. I told this story to someone in tutorials today, and then maybe it will resonate with people. But to get straight about the inverse operation, think about these two terms, or act like they're roommates, right? Like this guy has a y attached to him. This guy is a constant. He doesn't have a variable, you know, and one day they're not getting along, right? They're living over here on this side of the street. This is kind of a silly story. So what do you do when you want to move out from somewhere? Well, when I was talking to the young lady after school, there's two things you do. Well, first you got to pack up all your stuff, right? Well, you'll pack up everything, and then you're going to move, but you also want to do a change of address, right? Because you don't want your mail going over to someone else's house if you're not living there. You want your mail to go where you're moving to. So the way I think about this is I have negative 2y plus 7. I want to move my numbers to the right. So when I get ready to move this 7 over to the right side, I have to change the sign, change the address. So I'm going to do a minus 7. And I know you guys already know about the opposite of, you know, subtraction is addition and so forth, but I just wanted to tell that quick story. Maybe it helps someone. That's the inverse. We got to change the address, change the sign, do it to that side, okay? So now this guy doesn't live there anymore. Just the negative 2y is there. And this is the part I want to definitely stamp. So let me highlight that. This sign is going to flip. Is it? No, not yet. Jeez, what did I do that for, Lakeisha? Moving too quick. Nope, not yet. I meant to highlight this in this step, but it's okay. So now this is a negative 8. Sorry about that, guys. So in this step, so let me change colors. In this step, because I'm noticing that I'm going to divide by a negative 2 to both sides. And now I'm going to have y. See how it becomes a, not a greater, but now a less than. And then this is a positive 4. So I just want to highlight real quick. In this step is where we flipped. Okay, we flipped. And we flipped because we divided by a negative. So I'm going to put a little star. Flip when dividing or multiplying by a negative. I've been saying it in class, so hopefully that makes sense now. And again, if you forget to flip it on the day of the test, just check yourself, okay? And I'm going to do that super fast, and then I'm going to do 1 or 2 more, and then I'm going to stop this video. So I hope that you're pausing it to take breaks or take stuff in. You don't have to just sit here the whole time. All right, so again, now I got this from left to right. Y is less than 4. So if I want to check, a number less than 4 is 3. So I'm going to try y is equal to 3. So I go back to my original equation, and I'm going to substitute in 3's for those y's to the original problem. Okay, so I'm just going to do it right here. 6 times 3 plus 7. It has to be greater than 8 times 3 minus 1. So I'm going to do my arithmetic. This is 18 plus 7, which is 25. Is that greater than? This is 24 minus 1, which is 23. And that's a true statement. So yes, this has to be the way that it goes. And if you forgot to flip it, right, you divided by negative 2 and you didn't do that, watch this. So let's just say our answer, we messed up, and instead of getting y is less than 4, we got y is greater than 4. So a number greater than 4 is 5. So when I check, I'm going to try y is equal to 5. And then I'm going to do 6 times 5 plus 7. Is that greater than 8 times 5 minus 1? So this is 30 plus 7 is 37. And this is 40 minus 1, which is 39. So no, 37 is not greater than 39. So that would tell me right there, I did something wrong. Go back, oh yeah, she said that when I divide or multiply by a negative, I flip. All right, so I hope that makes sense. Let's go to another one. So let me see if I can do 2 more. All right, so for the next one, let me find one that's a little trickier maybe. And I'm just looking through the packet that you guys have. Okay. And no, I mean, I'm very basic on that. Okay, sorry guys. I'm gonna make it up because they literally have the same kind. Alright, I'll do one more. How about this one? And then I'm gonna make one up. Negative 10x plus 4 greater than or equal to negative 196 minus 14x. Okay, so for this one, again, I'm noticing that there's a variable and a number and a variable. So I'm going to do letters left, numbers right. There's nothing to combine. There's no distributive property. So again, I was talking about those roommates on both sides. They're not getting along. One person wants to move out, right? So the letters want to be together on the left side of the street. Change the address, change the sign, do the inverse operation. All of that means the same thing. We're going to subtract, keep the sign of the bigger number. So this is a 4x. Right, greater than or equal to negative 196. So all of our letters are on the left. And now, again, I want to move out here, the numbers to the right, so change the sign. Okay, it's really important that when you guys are in math class, I know some of this stuff is a lot of things, but just try not to tune me out, because I think that, not because I think you guys are, you just really want to key in on what it is I'm saying so we can comprehend why we're doing what we're doing. Okay, and so you build your strategy. Okay, so if I add this together, this is negative 200. Don't let that freak you out. That's negative 200. And then when we divide by 4, there's no reason to flip this inequality because we were dividing by a positive 4. So the answer is x greater than or equal to, and this is negative 50. Oops, sorry. Negative 50. And this one comes from the packet. Find it. So this one right here, guys, it was greater than, right? No. So it was A, if you happen to have this one. Okay. It was on an exit ticket. All right. Now I'm going to make up one that's a little bit more hairier, and maybe one more, and then I'll stop there. All right, so I'm going to make this one up, not on any worksheet, no packet. So what if I have, let's make it as ugly as we possibly can. Curious to see how this is going to turn out. That was long, right? Okay, so first things first. Ready? Uh-oh, sorry, I messed up. Make it an inequality problem. Oops. So greater than or equal to. Okay. So first things first is to do the distributive property. So I'm going to highlight the 5 there and the 10 there. And then I'm going to draw my arrows and I'm going to write DP, distributive property, distributive property. If you start saying it out loud and talking through the steps, that's what's going to make you get comfortable with the vocabulary and talking that way. All right, so going back to the left, there's nothing to do to this term. Drop it down. 5 times x is 5x. 5 times negative 6 is negative 30. Plus 5 minus 3x. I'm not going to try to be super awesome and do it all together in one step, which we can, but be safe, right? Then I'm going to keep moving to the to the right, and I'm going to put a greater than or equal to. Do the distributive property here. So 10x minus 40 plus 8. And now I'm going to highlight, because this step right here, guys, is our combined like term step. So CLT all through here. So which ones are like terms? Sure. I have a negative 2x, a 5x, a negative 3x on that side. And then I also have that negative 30 plus 5. So here we go. So from left to right, this subtract, this is a 3x. And then right here I'm going to combine. I have to subtract, and I think that's negative 25. Oh, this is going to be fun. I made it up, and I'm so happy because something canceled out. Greater than or equal to. And then on this side, these are my like terms. The negative 40 and the 8. So there's nothing to do to the 10x. And then I'm subtracting this for negative 32. All right, there we go. Now, we go back to the left, and look what we figure out. So we've taken care of CLT. We combined, right, the like terms. But then we still have some more CLT because guess what? These two x's are still there. So, what do you know? It cancels out. That's okay. So all I have left on the left side is that negative 25. Make sure you keep the sign on that 25. And then I still have these unlike terms. So I'm just going to drop this down. So what's interesting is you may freak out and say, well, Miss Mosley, oh my goodness, you know, you have an X on the right side. So that can happen as well, right? So usually I say right now, letters to the left, numbers to the right. But since the letter is on the right, just leave them there. And again, that roommate situation, change the address, do the inverse operation. So I'm going to just add 32. But again, in this case, the numbers, we're moving them to the left. As long as you're isolating your variable to one side, I don't care if it's on the right side or the left side. All right, so now last step. This we're going to subtract, and I'm having a brain fog, but I think it's 7. 25, 26. Yeah, it's a 7. Greater than or equal to 10x. And then when I divide by 10, okay, and I know it looks backwards, so y'all see these answers and y'all kind of get freaked out, but it's 7 over 10 greater than or equal to, still facing to the left, because I'm reading it from left to right, 7/10 is greater than or equal to x. Okay, now if this makes you feel a certain way, then that's okay. Listen very carefully to what I'm going to say right here. And I hope I get another problem that does this again. Then all you do is you're like, okay, I'm not used to seeing it this way as an answer choice. Then do this. Oh, I'm used to seeing my letter on the left, right? Pay attention. And the back of this thing is turned, away from the X. So basically you would just do what? Again, I'm trying to put my X on the left. And when I look from this perspective, the back of the inequality symbol is facing away from the X. So then when I draw it again, I want to face it away from the X. You see? It's facing toward the 7/10. That's how the positioning works. So now when I read this, guess what the answer is? X is what? Less than or equal to 7/10. You just have to play with this to feel more comfortable and choose the right choice. Okay? I'm going to do one more and then I'll stop the video. All right, last inequality problem. Sorry if it's making noise. I'm going to make it up. I'll freak you guys out. You want to do a fraction? I'm going to just do a fraction. Oh my gosh, I think I'm really hard on myself, but not really, but I'm just going to go for it. It's fine. I'll also do this too. Okay, you guys are probably not going to like me when it's all over with after this problem, but here we go. Still love you. All right, so again, take our time highlighting for the distributive property first. So I'm going to draw my arrows and write my DP. This is the last one, guys. All right, here we go. All right, so on this problem, okay, I'm going to drop down the 5y, the negative 5y, sorry about that. And then, again, if you need to do scratch work, do scratch work. So this is what I'm going to do my scratch work as I go. So I'm going to take negative 7 times 1/2 y. So I'm going to say, hey, negative 7 over 1 times 1/2. And I know I'm going to put a y in there when I do my answer. So just multiply across. So this is negative 7 over 2 y. Great, that's done. And now I'm going to do negative 7 times negative 8. A negative times a negative is a positive, and 7 times 8 is 56. So I'm going to put a plus 56 plus 6 equals, and now I have 2 times, watch the sign, negative y, so this is a negative 2y, and that's because this is a negative 1 there, okay? And then I'm going to do my scratch work again. I'm doing 2 times negative 4/5. So again, put whole numbers over 1 times. Please make sure you put the sign on that number. So this is a negative 4 over 5, which becomes negative 8. Multiply across, negative 8 over 5. So negative 8/5 is what we get when we do 2 times negative 4/5. All right, whole numbers over 1. Okay, now that we're done with the distributive property, we're back to CLT. Yes, there are fractions. I'm thinking about Taylor while I'm doing this problem. Miss Taylor. So in this case, I am going to highlight my like terms. So there's my y's. And then my other like terms are the 56 and 6. Again, we're combining like terms. Watch your signs, rule of integers. So now we got to do some more scratch work. So watch what I do. So I'm going to come to the side and I say, hey, whole numbers have to be over 1. Negative 5 over 1. But again, remember, when we do combine like terms, we're doing addition and subtraction. So we have this minus 7/2. And I didn't put the y's in just so there's not too much clutter there. All right, now listen carefully. This is how I tell the story when I had younger students. I would say, hey, this guy is speaking Spanish. This guy is speaking English, okay? They cannot communicate with each other. So you have to have what when you're working with fractions? The same common denominator. So let's teach this guy Spanish. And then when he learns Spanish, right, that's when he's going to be able to combine and communicate with this negative 7/2. So listen carefully. When you multiply by 2 to the bottom and the top, you're changing this guy, you're teaching him Spanish, teaching him the language to where he'll be an equivalent fraction with the same matching part at the bottom. I'm going to say it again. When you multiply by 2 here and multiply by 2 here, you're teaching this guy to speak Spanish. You're changing this to an equivalent fraction like this guy because they're both going to have the same kind of denominator. Okay? I know that sounds confusing, but just bear with me. Let's go. So now, what was negative 5 over 1, you guys, is the same. That's why this is an equivalent fraction. You just, again, made it have a 2 in the denominator. Okay? So negative 5 over 1 is the same as negative 10 over 2, right? Because look at it. Negative 10 divided by 2 is what? Negative 5. This is the same person. It's just that you taught him to speak a different language and you want him to have that same denominator. All right, so now change to a plus, bump back. The rules are still the same for the rule of integers, but we leave that 2 alone, and then we're going to add this for negative 17. I know, fractions, fractions, fractions. So now we come back to our scratch work, and guess what? This pink stuff here, combined like terms, is negative 17 over 2y. And then 56 plus 6 is going to be 62 equals, and there's nothing to do over here. Okay, there you go. So now this is where we're going to do letters left, numbers right, because again, we have a variable and a constant, a variable and a constant. So letters left, numbers right. And yes, it's going to be semi-painful because we're dealing with a couple of fractions that are not very clean, but we can do it. So we're going to move this to the left. So we're going to do the inverse operation, add 2y to both sides. Now I'm going to come to the side of my paper and I say, hey, I have negative 17/2 plus 2 over 1. I'm just ignoring the y's. I already know a y is going to be there because it's like terms. The 62 is going to be there. Okay, this negative 8/5. Okay, so let's do the arithmetic for this coefficient. So again, they're not speaking the same language. change this guy to where there's a 2 at the bottom. What was 2 over 1 is now 4 over 2 plus, and then negative 17 over 2. Again, see, now they're speaking the same language, they have the same parts. So now we're going to do negative 17 plus 4. This is negative 13. Subtract it and keep the sign of the bigger number. So this is negative 13 halves. And the last step is drop this down. And I'm going to subtract 62. So it's messy. And I'm going to put it over here. Minus 62. Oh, you know what I did? I forgot to put an inequality symbol. Jeez. You guys aren't with me. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to face it this way. Just go back and do it. This just has no bearing on messing up our answer right now. I just want to make this an inequality. Again, put a less than symbol. All right, now we're back to the last part of arithmetic, okay? I know I'm going to change this to a plus and bump back the negative. So I'm going to do my scratch work over here now. So I have negative 8 over 5 plus negative 62 over 1. They're not speaking, this guy's speaking German. I want to speak German too. So I'm going to learn the language, equivalent fraction. And this is a really high number. Plus, so I left this one alone. And negative 62, I'm a calculator. Negative 62 times 5. I'm sorry if it's small. I can't zoom in for some reason. Negative 62 times 5. So this is negative, because negative 62 times 5, it's negative 310 over 5. And here's the cool thing. Look, if you divide that answer by 5, see, it's the same number. We just want a 5 at the bottom. And the last step, leave the 5 at the bottom. And then again, we're going to add those two. That's negative 318. Yikes, Miss Mosley. Jeez, what was I doing? I just made it up. You should never fear any numbers. We can do it. We can do it. All right, so last step. Here we go. So now we have taken care of, just to let y'all know, again, when we deal with letters left, numbers to the right, after we do combining like terms, all of this step right here, you guys, all the way to here, everything in here had to do with adding and subtracting. That's what it is. Okay, step number 2, adding and subtracting. Step number 1 is distributive property, combine like terms. Okay, those are those notes at the top of the paper. Now last step, step 3, is always, again, what? Multiply or divide. Okay, so step number 3 is, again, multiplication or division to solve or isolate our variable. Now, in this case, it's a negative 13 over 2, and I want to talk about a fraction. When you want to get rid of a fraction in front of a variable, you multiply by its reciprocal. So I'm going to flip, okay, that 13 and 2, and I'm going to multiply by, make sure it's negative, 2 over 13. Okay, and I know it's kind of getting messy because of all the scratch work. Because between you and me, just because I'm doing this problem, I go to another sheet of paper. That's what I would have as scratch paper. So I'm going to multiply here, negative 2 over 13. Okay, here's the last step, and I'll come where it's nice and clean. So I need you to realize very quickly, negative 2 times negative 13, this is a positive 26. And then down here is also 26. Right? So this basically becomes 26 over 26y. That's why it's just a 1y. That's why you want to multiply by the reciprocal. It will get rid of a fraction in front of your variable. So now we have a big y, but because I multiply by a negative 2 over 13, and I have to do it to this side as well, I'm flipping my inequality symbol. So I'm going to put flip, because we multiply by a negative. And now, this is some really nasty math here. So let's do calculator. Negative 318 times negative 2 is 636 over. And then 13 times 5. 65. And we could leave it that way because there's no number that goes into both of those. So it's just an atrocious number. But I'm just going to see what it is as a decimal. it's like 9.78. So the answer, y is greater than or equal to, I would change this into a decimal. So then it would tell me, hey, choose something greater than 10 as an answer, or greater than 9.78, so I would choose 10, 11, 12, like that, okay? All right, yes, this problem was very torturous. I hope that you understand it now. Will there be one with a fraction? I don't think so. I think there's just gonna be whole numbers, so we'll be fine. So don't really stress over this one too much. If you want, let me just do one more simple one with a whole number. If you want to see one more. So, because I don't want anybody to think that it's going to be this bad. Let's see what happens with this one. Just whole numbers. Okay, so let's do the distributive property. 5g minus 2g minus 14 less than or equal to. Nothing to do on this side. Okay, and then I can combine like terms here. So that's a 3g minus 14 less than or equal to 7g minus 8. Okay, this step again, letters left, numbers to the right. So I'm going to subtract 7g to both sides. This is a negative 4g minus 14 less than or equal to negative 8. And then I'm going to do the 14, sorry, hold on. Then I'm going to move my numbers to the right. Take care of letters left. So I got to do the inverse of subtraction. I have to do addition, change the address. Subtracting that will give me a 6. Divide by negative 4. Ding, 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 flip, flip, flip. So g is greater than or equal to, this reduces, they're both divisible by 2 because it's even, so 3 over negative 2, which that's negative 1.5. So I want something greater than negative 1.5. So 0, 2, 8, okay? You can check yourself. All right, so that is the end of this video. I hope that it was helpful. Please come to tutorials today, which will be on tomorrow, and see if you want to make up some exit tickets. Have an awesome night, and I hope you guys will watch this and take some notes and be positive. All right, guys, talk to you later. Let me stop the video.